Black, CEO, humiliated over first-class meal, then teaches the crew a lesson they'll never forget. The first-class lounge at JFK buzzed with quiet affluence. Crystal glasses clinked, laughter floated lightly over leather seats. Everyone belonged, or believed they did. Everyone, except the woman sitting quietly in the corner, reading the latest quarterly report from her company. That woman was Vanessa Rhodes, founder and CEO of Rhodes Quantum, a rising force in global tech and AI defense systems. At 42, Vanessa had become one of the most respected names in the industry, but respect didn't come easily. She had fought for it, carved it out with sweat and certainty in rooms where no one looked like her. Vanessa wore a deep emerald suit tailored to perfection, her curls pulled into a low chignon. A minimalist gold watch peeked out from under her cuff. She wasn't flashy, just unmistakably composed. As her assistant messaged her with final updates before the Geneva summit, a soft voice called out, "Ms. Rhodes, we're ready to board. First-class passengers, please." Vanessa stood and walked with the confidence of someone who had never been invited into elite spaces but had made space for herself anyway. Flight 876 to Geneva was about more than business. She was about to finalize a defense tech deal that would shift the balance of power in European cybersecurity. This wasn't just a flight. It was a gateway. She stepped into the aircraft, nodded politely to the attendant by the door, and found her seat, 1A, a window seat. Her favorite. There was already a chilled towel waiting, a small bottle of still water, and a menu, though she didn't need it. She'd pre-ordered her meal a week prior, something she always did on international flights. Lobster bisque to start, followed by medium-rare filet mignon and a glass of Lafite Rothschild. She didn't care for extravagance. She cared for consistency, for preparedness. It was who she was. As she settled in, a white man took the seat beside her in 1B. He wore a Patagonia vest and a Bluetooth headset. He gave her a brief glance, then turned his body slightly away, as if assuming she was someone's assistant who'd gotten upgraded by mistake. She ignored it. She was used to that assumption. It usually died the second someone Googled her name. The flight took off smoothly. Champagne was served. Vanessa declined. She preferred to keep her senses sharp. 30 minutes in, a petite blonde flight attendant approached, her smile tight, her name tag reading Claire. "Ms. Rhodes?" she asked, tilting her head. "I'm terribly sorry, but it looks like your pre-ordered entree isn't available this evening." Vanessa blinked once. "Excuse me?" "We had an issue with the catering service. We can offer you a cold turkey sandwich and a salad." Claire's tone didn't match her words. It was too rehearsed, too practiced, and the way she didn't quite meet Vanessa's gaze told her everything. Vanessa remained silent for a second. "That meal was ordered 7 days ago. I received confirmation by email and phone." "Yes, ma'am." "Unfortunately, it didn't load with the rest. We do apologize." Claire handed her the sandwich, still sealed in plastic wrap, and walked off without waiting for a response. Across the aisle, the man in 1B was being served seared salmon with truffle butter. 2 rows back, a trio of white executives laughed as they clinked their wine glasses over warm steaks. Vanessa stared down at the sandwich, a cold sandwich. In first class, after submitting her order, getting confirmation, and holding VIP status with this airline for nearly a decade, it wasn't just the sandwich. It was the way Claire hadn't waited to hear if Vanessa was satisfied, the way she hadn't offered an alternative or even offered to check again. It was the dismissiveness, the assumption, the silent suggestion that Vanessa didn't belong in that seat, despite her success. Vanessa's fingers rested on the tray table, still folded. She didn't touch the sandwich. She didn't call Claire back. She didn't make a scene. But her jaw clenched, and her mind shifted gears. She reached for her phone, opened a secure app designed by her own company, an internal analytics tool used in corporate compliance investigations. Within seconds, she pulled up the in-flight crew manifest. Claire's full name appeared. Claire Whitmore, senior crew member, onboard supervisor, 6 years with Altavia Airlines. Vanessa tapped once, then again. Quiet commands. She sent a flag service complaint to her internal audit team, embedding footage from her seat's camera, footage that showed Claire handing out premium meals to passengers of one skin color while giving her a plastic sandwich. She attached it to a code red report. Then she slid her phone back into her blazer pocket and looked straight ahead. This wasn't rage. This wasn't panic. This was method. This was strategy. Because Vanessa Rhodes didn't need to shout to teach a lesson, she just needed to be underestimated, and Claire Whitmore had just made the biggest mistake of her career. The hum of the jet engines outside the cabin windows was a constant, low murmur, a mechanical lullaby that usually soothed first-class travelers into submission. But not Vanessa Rhodes. Not tonight. She sat motionless in seat 1A, the untouched sandwich still perched on the tray in front of her like an insult in cellophane. Around her dinnerware clinked gently. Aromas of buttered asparagus, filet mignon, and spiced lamb wafted from neighboring seats. Glasses clinked again, another toast behind her. No one noticed the woman in the front row who had just been offered a meal better suited for a vending machine. Vanessa's mind wasn't in the cabin anymore. It was working its way backward through years of meetings, briefings, awards, and battles for recognition. Through the nights, she stayed up debugging code while men in cheaper suits got the credit. Through the boardrooms where she was asked if she was someone's assistant. Through the panel discussions where she was introduced last even though she was the keynote speaker. She'd been served a cold sandwich plenty of times in her career. Not just the edible kind, but the kind that says, in quiet, deliberate language, you're not like them. You're tolerated, not welcomed. And now, inside an aircraft worth hundreds of millions of dollars, in a seat that cost nearly $10,000, Vanessa was being reminded that some people still thought class didn't come with skin like hers. A tap on her shoulder startled her. It was the male attendant, early 40s, salt and pepper hair, calm demeanor. His name tag read Marcus. Ms. Rhodes? His tone was polite, almost overly careful. I wanted to check if everything was to your liking. She turned to look at him slowly. Do you usually serve cold sandwiches to Diamond Elite passengers who pre-ordered a week in advance? Marcus's face twitched ever so slightly. I wasn't made aware of your pre-order until just now. Let me check with the galley and see if we don't. Her voice was soft, but it sliced through his sentence. Don't insult me by pretending this was a mistake. Marcus hesitated, then bowed his head slightly. I apologize for the experience, ma'am. I'll inform the cabin lead. No need? She already knows, Vanessa replied, her eyes locked onto his. Claire Whitmore made it very clear that I wasn't a priority. Her words were scripted, but her eyes said everything. Marcus's throat moved as he swallowed. If there's anything else we can do. There is, she said, leaning forward slightly. You can listen very carefully, and remember this moment. Because it's going to come back to you. He looked like he wanted to ask a question. He didn't. He just nodded and walked away, shoulders a little stiffer than before. Vanessa reached under her seat and pulled out her briefcase. She didn't need to read anything, but she needed the act of preparation, the click of the lock, the feel of paper. Familiar rituals to center her. Her tablet was already awake, open to her encrypted audit dashboard. Her team would be receiving the first wave of flagged service behavior soon: facial recognition tagging, tone of voice analysis, passenger interaction breakdowns. Rhodes Quantum didn't just create cybersecurity systems. It had developed one of the most advanced AI-powered behavioral monitoring platforms for private clients in government and finance, the kind that could detect passive bias in body language long before HR departments caught on. And Vanessa had full access, even in flight. She tapped on the name Claire Whitmore again. A profile popped up. Employee ID, tenure, flight history. More importantly, complaint data. 2 previous incidents flagged by minority passengers, both dismissed as anecdotal. One related to perceived bias during meal service, another citing repeated neglect of call button responses. Both filed, both dismissed, both closed within 72 hours with the same phrase: insufficient evidence to pursue. Vanessa leaned back, her pulse steady. Insufficient evidence. That phrase had followed her entire life. When she didn't get funding for her startup, insufficient traction. When she was passed over for an award, insufficient leadership visibility. When a male colleague took credit for her breakthrough, insufficient documentation to assign sole credit. Always not enough. Always invisible. Unless she made herself undeniable. From the corner of her eye, she noticed Claire approaching the row again. Vanessa turned her head slightly, enough to signal she was watching. Claire stopped short, smiled tightly, then walked right past her without saying a word. Vanessa wasn't surprised, but she wasn't done either. She opened the in-flight messaging system and connected to the aircraft's secure satellite signal. A quick tap, a password, and she was in a back channel reserved for internal coordination within Rhodes Quantum. She typed only a few words. Activate Protocol 1. Flag Flight 876. Behavior Log. Passenger 1A. Crew Interactions. Full diagnostic. 5 seconds later, a confirmation. Then she messaged someone else. Miles Chan, her Director of Security Strategy, a former Air Force intelligence analyst who now ran silent background checks for high-profile incidents just like this. She typed, something small, Flight 876, monitor crew leads. Pull incident data from last 6 months. Look for patterns. I'll explain more after landing. He responded instantly, on it. You okay? Her reply, better than they are. Just then, the captain's voice came over the intercom, calm and deep. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be dimming the lights for rest. Estimated time to Geneva, 7 hours. Cabin crew will be making a final round before lights out. Vanessa closed her tablet and placed it gently in her briefcase. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't called out Claire by name. She hadn't even complained to the airline's public channel, but what she'd done would echo much further than a viral tweet or a comment card. She was shifting the axis. Quietly, strategically. She leaned back into her seat and exhaled. The sandwich was still there, unopened. She looked at it one last time before whispering to herself, "This isn't about dinner." It never was. It was about reminding people like Claire that some passengers don't need to shout to be heard. They just need to know how to make the system speak. By the time the plane coasted into the dark stretch above the Atlantic, most of the cabin had slipped into silence. Lights dimmed to a soft amber glow, whispers replaced with the gentle hum of air circulation and the occasional clink of glass. Vanessa Rhodes sat upright in her seat, eyes open, mind racing. She wasn't angry. She didn't let herself get angry, not outwardly. That was a luxury for people who could afford to be emotional without being labeled irrational. Instead, she calculated. Her watch buzzed gently. A message from Miles. Initial scan complete. Crew lead Claire Whitmore has 4 prior flags, 2 soft complaints, 2 HR referrals, 1 pending review. Passenger profiling behavior noted. Building full dossier. Vanessa inhaled slowly, gaze fixed on the screen embedded into the wall ahead. A map of the flight's path blinked. They had 6 hours until Geneva, 6 hours until this entire charade, this quiet erasure dressed in luxury, would start unraveling in front of the people who thought no one was watching. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a slim case marked V-Secure XX and slipped out a drive no larger than a fingernail. With it, she could activate her proprietary monitoring program, one designed specifically for executive risk protection. It wasn't spying. It was protection, observation in a world that so often blurred boundaries for people like her. A few rows back, Claire was chatting with a group of middle-aged men. One of them was Charles Roderick, an investment banker Vanessa had met once at a tech summit in Dubai. He'd mistaken her for an event coordinator. "Didn't expect to see someone like you speaking on that stage," he'd said. Vanessa never forgot those words, just like she wouldn't forget this moment. Because people like Claire and Charles shared something dangerous. The ability to humiliate without raising their voices, to diminish without being overt. And society had always given them a free pass. Vanessa's gaze drifted to the call button. She didn't press it. Not yet. Instead, she tapped her tablet and opened the live behavior capture interface. It ran a facial sentiment scan, analyzing smiles, tone, and response latency from cabin crew based on cabin footage. Her program began flagging anomalies, delayed responses to passengers of color, longer engagement with white passengers, less eye contact with women traveling alone. The system was like a digital mirror, and Claire's reflection wasn't looking good. A beep. New flag. Crew lead C. Whitmore. Code 219B. Selective priority behavior. She tapped the screen. Playback showed Claire offering chocolate mousse to Mr. Roderick, asking if he'd like a second helping of dessert. Then the same Claire responding to a female passenger, an Asian woman in business attire, with a mechanical nod, and walking past her without comment. Vanessa tagged the clip. Then she sent a quick voice message to Miles. Add this to the core behavioral index. We're not just proving mistreatment. We're proving a pattern. As she set the device down, the soft sound of heels approached. It wasn't Claire. It was Marcus, the male attendant from earlier. He paused beside her seat, hands clasped in front of him. "Ms. Rhodes," he began, voice low but professional. "I wanted to clarify something." She turned toward him slowly. "Go on." "There was a catering discrepancy, or at least that's what I was told. But after reviewing the manifest and crew logs, your meal was never offloaded. It was rerouted to seat 1C, Mr. Roderick." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "Rerouted?" He hesitated. "It's unusual, but sometimes, under subjective crew judgment, meal preferences are—" She cut him off with a sharp look. "Subjective crew judgment, that's what we're calling it?" "I'm not defending it," Marcus replied. "But I thought you should know." "Thank you," Vanessa said quietly. "You've just confirmed more than you realize." Marcus gave a faint nod and stepped back. That was the twist. Claire hadn't simply ignored Vanessa's pre-order. She had reassigned it to someone deemed more appropriate for the experience. A man who had once said she didn't belong on stage was now eating her steak and sipping her wine. Vanessa wasn't hurt, she wasn't surprised, but she was finished pretending this was about oversight. She tapped her screen again and sent a voice memo. "To Geneva legal team, flag this flight." Request full CCTV pull for first-class cabin passenger 1C. Confirm food reassignment. Include timestamp. Behavioral log will follow. Another tap. Another message. To Rhodes Internal, prepare media brief draft for post-landing. Title, First-Class Standards or First-Class Bias. CEO denied pre-ordered meal in favor of white male passenger. Hold for release, pending legal green light. Across the aisle, Mr. Roderick chuckled at something Claire had said. Vanessa didn't look. She didn't need to. She leaned back into her seat again, her face unreadable, the cold sandwich tray still untouched beside her. This time she did press the call button. Claire came over. "Yes?" she asked, the practiced smile already in place. Vanessa didn't look at her. "I'd like my original meal," she said simply. "I'm afraid it's been given to Mr. Roderick in 1C, Vanessa said, turning her head now to lock eyes with her. "That's what Marcus confirmed, without my consent. Without company policy alignment. And without any regard for the ticket I paid for, the status I earned, or the basic dignity expected in this cabin." Claire's smile faltered. "Ms. Rhodes, there must have been—" "Don't," Vanessa said, raising a hand. "Whatever excuse you're about to offer, I've heard it before, and I've recorded everything you've said on this flight. Including the moment you called Mr. Roderick by name while referring to me as ma'am." The flight attendant's cheeks flushed a pale red. Vanessa continued. "I won't ask for an apology. That would assume I expected you to treat me right in the first place. I just wanted you to know this won't stay in the air." "It's landing with me." Claire stood frozen, unsure whether to speak or retreat. She chose the latter, turning quickly and walking away, her shoulders rigid. Vanessa turned her face back toward the window. The stars outside blinked softly in the dark. She closed her eyes, let the silence fold around her. She wasn't done. Not yet, but the lesson had already begun. Vanessa kept her eyes closed, but her thoughts were sharper than ever. Her mind wasn't resting. It was organizing, filing, connecting. Years of building Rhodes Technologies had trained her to work like this, quietly, relentlessly, without ever announcing the storm. She reopened her eyes and glanced at the untouched tray beside her. The dry sandwich, the lukewarm water, a message disguised as a meal. She reached for her tablet and opened the internal dashboard of Artec's Sentinel Protocol, an executive monitoring suite she had developed for clients dealing with high-level travel security. But tonight, it wasn't for a client. It was for her. The system had already begun compiling passenger interaction data from the past 4 hours of flight. Using audio from onboard mics, visual input from first-class cabin cameras, and emotion recognition filters, it calculated behavioral bias scores. It wasn't magic. It was machine learning built from hundreds of hours of training data fed by real-world patterns. And Claire Whitmore's numbers were lighting up red. Vanessa expanded the timeline and tapped into a short clip from earlier. Claire's voice was heard addressing Mr. Roderick. "Would you prefer another glass of the 2011 Merlot, or shall I bring the Malbec from our reserve collection?" Vanessa blinked. That wine wasn't even listed on the menu. She fast-forwarded. Another clip. Claire speaking to a younger white woman in seat 2A. "Miss Dawson, I've brought a second pillow as you requested, and an extra blanket. Please let me know if your headset is acting up again." She scanned further, then paused. Her own clip. Claire standing by her seat. "I'm sorry, we ran out of your meal option. Here's a chicken sandwich. No offer of an alternative." No eye contact, no pillow, no blanket, no name. Vanessa exhaled. There was a difference between oversight and pattern, and this wasn't accidental. It was embedded, habitual. That was more dangerous than any one insult. She tapped the screen and saved the analysis. Her eyes burned, not from emotion, but from the sharpness of resolve. She was going to make this more than a report. This was going to be a case study. A soft knock on her seat's partition broke her concentration. It was Marcus again, looking visibly nervous. "Missile Rhodes, the purser asked me to offer you a drink. On the house." Vanessa gave a small, ironic smile. "They think that makes this better?" "I don't." "But I thought you should know." He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder. "Claire's been in the crew bay, messaging someone. She looked rattled. Good." "She should be," Vanessa said, then added, "Marcus, I need your help, discreetly." He nodded. "Record your next interaction with her. On your phone. Don't make it obvious, just capture how she talks when she doesn't think someone's listening." He hesitated, then said, "If it helps make it right, I'll do it." "Thank you." Marcus disappeared again. Vanessa turned back to her dashboard. She composed a secure message to Elena Myers, Artec's legal director, and CC'd Miles. Subject: Request full legal position prep. Incident on flight SX431. Begin compiling admissible evidence of discriminatory service behavior by airline employee Claire Whitmore. Include behavioral pattern analysis, witness cooperation, Marcus West, audio/video capture logs, and service manifest discrepancies. We are building a civil discrimination claim. Potential media exposure and public accountability request to follow. Draft press options, draft settlement demand outline, priority level, red. She hit send. This wasn't just about her seat anymore. It was about the woman in seat 14D who probably hadn't been offered a second drink. The Asian couple in 3A and 3B whose wine orders were forgotten. The silent norm that treated whiteness as VIP and everything else as extra baggage. Across the aisle, Mr. Roderick was still laughing, oblivious. Claire brought him another glass of wine, leaning in a little too closely. Vanessa watched it play out like a scripted performance. Suddenly, Marcus reappeared. He looked tense, his face pale. "She said something," he whispered. "I got it on my phone." She was in the crew galley talking to another attendant. What did she say? Marcus handed over a small Bluetooth earpiece, barely visible. Vanessa inserted it. Hit play. Claire's voice came through, hushed but sharp. "I don't care who she is. She could be the president of a tech company or whatever. She came in here with that look, like we're all supposed to bow down. I gave her a sandwich and she looked at me like I was her maid." A pause. A chuckle. "Well, welcome to first class, sweetheart. Not everything's handed to you." The recording ended. Vanessa didn't blink. Didn't flinch. She simply pulled the earpiece out and handed it back to Marcus. "That'll do." "Thank you." The air around her felt heavier now. But inside her, something was crystal clear. She no longer had to wonder if this was about race, or power, or gender. It was about all of it, and how it had become so normalized that people like Claire could say these things and still serve another meal like nothing happened. Vanessa opened a new message on her dashboard. Subject: Activation of Phase 2. Prepare press briefing for direct release, no intermediaries. No softening. Contact 3 independent journalists: Rachel Hill, The Atlantic, James Okoro, NYT, and Mira Patel, Tech plus Culture Weekly. I want them briefed and on standby. Include audio clip. "This is going public," she sent it. Then she leaned back again and finally removed the cold sandwich from her tray, placing it neatly into the trash compartment beside her. Not out of rage. Out of principle. Across the cabin, Claire walked by again, her posture stiffer, her eyes no longer confident. Vanessa didn't look at her. She didn't have to. The battle was already being fought, not with yelling. Not with spectacle, but with undeniable proof, precise timing, and relentless truth. And soon, everyone would see what Vanessa Rhodes could do, not when she's disrespected, but when she chooses to respond. Vanessa Rhodes stepped off the plane in Geneva with a stillness that unnerved even the most seasoned ground crew. The moment her heels touched the polished floor of the VIP corridor, the air seemed to shift. Two men in suits were already waiting. One of them, a sharp-faced man with a tablet, extended a hand she didn't take. "Ms. Rhodes, I'm Oliver Vance, Director of Stratus Air Europe. We'd like to extend our sincerest." She walked right past him. "I don't need apologies," she said calmly. "Not yet. What I need is accountability." Behind her, Claire Whitmore disembarked from the rear. Her confident posture was gone, replaced by something brittle. She caught sight of Vanessa up ahead and instinctively looked away. But it was too late. A woman in a navy pantsuit holding a clipboard intercepted her and the rest of the cabin crew. "Claire Whitmore?" the woman asked sharply. Claire blinked. "Yes? Please follow me. HR has a few questions regarding your service on flight SX431. Your colleagues will be escorted to a separate briefing room." Claire opened her mouth, but no words came out. She followed, her face draining of color. Meanwhile, Vanessa was being ushered into a private car by a silent driver wearing a dark earpiece. The car's interior was sleek, cold, efficient. But her thoughts were louder than the engine. She pulled out her phone and saw the message from Elena. Evidence confirmed. Audio, behavior patterns, internal flight crew logs cross-referenced. You're clear to release. Attached was a folder labeled Project Spotlight, Flight SX431 Discrimination Report. Vanessa typed back a simple reply. Approved. Send to Rachel Hill, Mira Patel, James Okoro. Full green light. Timestamp release 10:00 a.m. GMT. She hit send and leaned back in her seat. There was no satisfaction on her face. No smug smile, just a quiet certainty. The storm was about to land, not in turbulence, but in truths made undeniable. At Stratus Europe's main terminal office, a flurry of internal activity had begun. Legal teams were already on calls. Public relations advisors were pulling up Vanessa's media footprint. Someone whispered that this wasn't just any CEO, it was that Vanessa Rhodes, the one who had helped draft part of the National Equity in AI Standards Act, the one with congressional connections, boardroom dominance, and an unapologetic sense of timing. Inside a glass conference room, the executive meeting had begun. Charles Hanley, head of Global Customer Experience, was already sweating through his collar. "She has the recording," one advisor whispered. "Which one?" Hanley asked. "All of them. And facial bias recognition data." He sat back in his chair. "We're dead." Vanessa stepped into the boardroom without knocking. Her assistant Asha was right behind her, carrying a printed folder, her tablet already displaying the released coverage. On the large screen, the Atlantic's homepage had already updated. When luxury has a skin color, Black CEO humiliated in first class, exposes systemic bias in Stratus Airlines. Below that, an autoplay video of Claire's voice. "I don't care who she is. Welcome to first class, sweetheart." The room went silent. Vanessa placed the printed dossier onto the glass table. "I'm not here to listen to excuses," she said, voice even. "I'm here to explain how we're going to fix this. You have one opportunity to do the right thing, not just for me, but for every person who paid for a seat and received a lesson in humiliation instead." Vanessa didn't sit. She stood at the head of the table like it was her boardroom, and for a moment it was. Her eyes swept the room, scanning each face, each posture. Most were already avoiding her gaze. A few had their tablets out, nervously tapping through crisis protocol manuals that suddenly felt flimsy. "I want 3 things," she said, her voice calm but unrelenting. Immediate suspension of the crew members involved. Public acknowledgement of wrongdoing, not sanitized PR language. I mean real words. And third, this is non-negotiable, a structural overhaul of your luxury service training program. Top to bottom. Charles Hanley cleared his throat. "Ms. Rhodes, I want to personally say how deeply sorry we are." "I can assure you." She held up a hand. "You don't get to assure me," she said. "You had your chance on that flight." He swallowed hard and nodded. Asha stepped forward and connected her tablet to the room's display. The screen flickered, then showed a time-stamped service log from flight SX431. "May I walk you through what we've gathered?" Asha asked, in the same professional, matter-of-fact tone Vanessa used when closing deals worth billions. The executives nodded, silently. At 7:52 a.m., Vanessa Rhodes, Diamond Platinum status, 14 years of elite membership, was denied her pre-ordered meal, despite the order being confirmed 3 times. At 7:58, the same attendant was recorded serving 3 white male passengers the exact meals Mrs. Rhodes had requested. She tapped again. Claire Whitmore, senior cabin crew, previously reprimanded informally twice for similar discrepancies, but no formal action was taken. Another tap. A grainy clip played from the cabin footage. Claire's face was unmistakable. Her smirk. The way she leaned into the white passengers while barely looking at Vanessa. A murmur rippled across the room. Then Asha showed the results of a tone analysis, the warmth level of Claire's voice when addressing passengers. When speaking to white men, rated friendly professional. When addressing Vanessa, detached cold. "This isn't bias," Asha said. "It's discrimination, dressed in etiquette." Charles Hanley looked visibly shaken. "What happens next?" Vanessa said, her voice softer now, but no less powerful. "Depends on your answer. You can either begin a transformation today or wait until every partner, investor, and customer forces your hand. You already know which will cost you more." She let the words hang in the air. Across the room, someone finally broke the silence. A middle-aged woman from legal affairs leaned forward. "I agree with Ms. Rhodes. If we delay addressing this head-on, the fallout will extend beyond PR. There's legal exposure, financial liability, cultural collapse," Vanessa added, cutting in. "Don't forget that one." "You've built a service empire on elegance, not exclusion. But the truth is, your elegance has limits. I met one of them at 30,000 feet. Hanley sighed. "You're right. You're absolutely right." Another executive leaned forward. "If we grant you full oversight, would you be willing to work with our internal teams? Rebuild the luxury experience from a lens of equity?" Asha smiled faintly. Vanessa's eyes narrowed, but not from suspicion, from strategy. "I'll consider it," Vanessa said, "but only if you stop thinking this is about me. You embarrassed a symbol, but you've humiliated a system." "Let's fix the latter." She stepped back, allowing the weight of her words to settle over them. At that exact moment, Asha's phone buzzed quietly. A live news update appeared on the screen behind them without prompting. Breaking. U.S. Transportation Ethics Board calls for formal review of luxury airline practices after discrimination allegations. The room went dead silent again. Vanessa nodded once and turned toward the exit. "This is just the first lesson," she said. "What comes next? That depends on whether you've learned anything at all." Vanessa stepped out of the boardroom and into the hallway like a storm front moving through clear skies. She wasn't angry. She had passed that stage hours ago, somewhere over the Atlantic, somewhere between that cold sandwich and the silence of everyone around her. No. What pulsed through her veins now was something deeper, precision, and she was ready to use it. Asha trailed beside her, tablet tucked under her arm like a scalpel in the hands of a surgeon. "The first press leak is already out," she said. "They're running with the headline, 'Black CEO denied first-class service.' Airline responds with promises. Neutral, but spinning fast." Vanessa's lips tightened. "Let it. We're not here for pity. We're here for policy." Downstairs, the lobby of the corporate tower buzzed with nervous energy. Security guards stood a little straighter. Receptionists whispered behind their desks. It wasn't every day a woman like Vanessa Rhodes walked in unannounced, dropped a digital dossier on a table, and made a Fortune 500 company pivot mid-flight. But upstairs, in rooms she'd just left, that pivot was now in motion, and outside those walls, the world was beginning to watch. The first wave came by mid-afternoon. A subtle, almost whispered PR release from Stratosair's comms department posted to their Twitter and LinkedIn channels. It read like every other generic statement: regret, review, commitment to excellence. Vanessa read it and scoffed. "They think they can run this like it's turbulence," she said, tossing the phone to Asha. "Give it 24 hours. I'll give them a real storm." And she did. By midnight, 3 independent whistleblowers, former Stratus flight crew members, had submitted their anonymous statements to a well-known equity watchdog group. All 3 described nearly identical patterns of subtle passenger filtering, a process in which minority passengers were deprioritized for service under the guise of load balancing. None of it was written into policy. All of it was systemic. Asha had seen enough. She uploaded the compiled testimony to a secure portal, and within an hour the watchdog group published a public report titled "Elegance or Exclusion: A Hidden Culture in Luxury Skies." That's when it broke. Mainstream news outlets picked it up like it was wildfire. CNN ran a panel about covert racial bias in elite services. MSNBC did a segment on Vanessa's career and how she'd turned a minor offense into a movement. Fox News, predictably, tried to downplay it, calling it an overreaction from a hypersensitive corporate elite. But that didn't stop the avalanche. Within 12 hours, #FirstClassButBlack was trending nationwide. Back in her penthouse overlooking downtown Chicago, Vanessa watched it all unfold with a strange calm. She didn't need to clap back or do interviews. She knew the weight of silence used wisely was more powerful than 1,000 sound bites. But then something unexpected happened. An email popped into her inbox, not from Stratosair, not from the media, not from activists. It was from Claire Whitmore. Subject line: "From 30,000 feet to rock bottom." Vanessa stared at the screen for a moment before clicking it open. The message was short. "I know you probably don't care to hear from me, and I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know something. It wasn't about your race, at least not consciously. I've been trained to move fast, prioritize certain behaviors, and honestly, I didn't realize how deep that conditioning ran until now. I've been suspended. Probably fired soon, and I get it, I deserve it, but I want to understand. If you're willing to talk even for 5 minutes, I'm listening." Vanessa sat back. Her gut reaction was simple. Delete it. Let her sit in that discomfort. Let the system deal with her like it had dealt with women like Vanessa for years. But after a long moment, she stood up and walked out onto the balcony. The city stretched wide and golden beneath her. Cold, beautiful, full of noise and shadows. She remembered being 19, hustling through college while waiting tables at a steakhouse that served people who wouldn't make eye contact with her. She remembered the manager who used to say, "Smile extra for the rich folks, they tip better," and how rich folks never once looked like her. The thought lingered. Back inside, Vanessa sat down again. She didn't reply to Claire, not yet. But she didn't delete the email either, because this wasn't just about punishment. It was about pulling a thread until the whole mask fell off the face of this illusion called luxury. The next morning, Vanessa received a formal invitation, not from the PR office, not from middle management. It came directly from the CEO of Stratus Air, Charles Hanley. The letter read, "We have failed, not just you, but an entire class of customers who've built empires, led change, and still had to prove their place. I want to do more than apologize. I want you to help us rebuild, not as a favor, as a partner." It was signed by hand. No scanned signature, no intern-drafted language. Vanessa passed it to Asha and didn't speak for a full minute. Then, with that calm fire only she knew how to hold, she said, "Get me a quiet room, no cameras, no microphones. I'll speak, but only once." And just like that, the CEO they tried to humiliate over a cold sandwich was about to deliver the most scorching truth of their entire brand's history, one that no one would forget and no one could ignore. The reckoning had only just begun. The private conference room at the top floor of the Stratus Air headquarters in New York wasn't meant for public view. It was a room usually reserved for high-level investor negotiations, contracts worth billions, or quiet damage control conversations that never left the glass walls. But that day it hosted something far more unpredictable: the truth. Vanessa sat at the far end of the room, a glass of water untouched beside her, her posture poised yet relaxed. She wore a slate-gray suit, not overly flashy, but not humble either. Just like her presence, it didn't beg for attention, but no one in the room could look away. Across from her sat Charles Hanley, CEO of Stratus Air, flanked by 2 executive board members and the company's head of legal affairs. Behind them, muted on a projection screen, were 4 regional directors tuning in remotely from London, Dubai, and Singapore. No camera crews, no press releases, just people who knew they had something to answer for. Charles began cautiously. "Ms. Rhodes, I want to thank you for agreeing to meet with us. What happened aboard Flight 347 was unacceptable. Our internal review confirms that protocol was violated." "I don't need an apology," Vanessa interrupted, her voice low but firm. "I've had those before. They always come with the same flavor, hollow, well-intentioned. But ultimately forgettable." The room fell still. "I'm here," she continued, "because you asked me to be, not as a token, not as someone to clean up your brand image. If we're going to talk, we're going to do it without sugarcoating." Charles gave a slow nod. "Agreed." Vanessa leaned forward slightly. "The flight attendant who served me, the one who said it happens all the time when I questioned why my pre-ordered meal was missing, her name was Claire Whitmore. She wasn't the beginning of the problem. She was just the latest face of it. What I want to know is how a company with billion-dollar valuation, international reach, and top-tier standards allowed someone like her to rise through the ranks for years with multiple flagged reports." The legal officer spoke, her voice carefully measured. "Our internal system was not designed to detect nuanced bias. Most complaints were dismissed as customer dissatisfaction, not behavior-related." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "Then your system was designed to fail. Let me be clear, what happened on that plane was not just about a meal. It was about how invisible people like me become even after we've done everything right." Even in seat 1A, she let the silence stretch. Then she delivered the twist they weren't expecting. "I have no intention of suing you," she said. "That's what your legal team has been preparing for, right? A lawsuit, a settlement. You think I'm here to collect a check and walk away?" One of the board members shifted uncomfortably. Vanessa continued, "But if I did sue, I'd win, and it wouldn't cost you just money. It would cost you trust. Customers don't fly with brands that remind them they're not welcome." Charles sighed. "So, what do you want?" Vanessa smiled faintly. "Change, real change, not posters in break rooms. Not buzzwords in employee handbooks. I want to rewrite your crew training program from the ground up." One of the regional directors on screen spoke, skeptical. "With all due respect, Ms. Rhodes, you're a tech CEO, not an expert in aviation service." Vanessa didn't flinch. "True. But I am an expert in system design. I built a security platform that protects 12 governments from cyber threats. I understand how systems are built, how culture is coded into protocols, and how silence becomes part of the architecture. I can break that." The man on screen didn't reply. Vanessa turned back to Charles. "You want me to help you fix this? Then let's do it publicly. I don't want to be your secret consultant. I want full transparency, a public partnership, the first luxury airline to address service bias with real action. You let me build it, you put it in place, then you let the world watch you live by it." It was bold, risky, but undeniably powerful. Charles looked at his legal officer, then at his board members, then back at Vanessa. "Give me 24 hours. You have 12, she said, rising from her chair. "If I don't hear back, I walk, and I'll take my story with me. And believe me, you don't want that version making headlines." As she left the room, the executive sat in stunned silence. Back at her hotel, Vanessa collapsed into a leather armchair, exhaustion finally catching up to her. She looked out at the skyline, her mind replaying every detail of the meeting. She hadn't yelled, hadn't made threats. She'd spoken like she always did, measured, precise, sharp as a scalpel. But the cut she delivered, it went deeper than any lawsuit could. Her phone buzzed. "Asha." "New development," her assistant said. "A former VP from Stratus just reached out anonymously. He wants to give you access to internal training documents. Says it's time the truth gets cleaned out." Vanessa gave a quiet, satisfied breath. "Tell him we're listening," she said. "Because this lesson isn't just for the crew. It's for everyone who ever thought Seat 1A was only made for one kind of passenger. She didn't need to teach them with fury. She'd do it with facts, system blueprints, and change that no one could undo." One by one, the walls were coming down, and it had only just begun. The press conference room at Stratus Air's international headquarters had never been so full. A quiet murmur filled the space, reporters adjusting lenses, staff straightening ties, security stationed along the walls. Every major news network from CNN to Bloomberg had sent someone, and all for a woman who, just days before, had been handed a cold sandwich in first class like it was nothing. Vanessa Rhodes stood just beyond the curtains, in the wings of the stage, watching as the moderator introduced the event. Behind her was a small team, no publicists, no PR coaches, just Asha and 2 young interns from her foundation who insisted on being there. One of them, a girl, barely 20, whispered nervously, "Are you nervous?" Vanessa smiled, calm as ever. "Not at all. I'm not here to ask for anything." When her name was called, Vanessa stepped into the spotlight. No grand entrance, no handshakes. Just her presence. She wore a simple ivory blazer, no visible branding, and a tiny gold pin on her lapel, an open book overlaid with wings. It was the emblem of the Rhodes Initiative, her new nonprofit aimed at rebuilding equity training in corporate culture. The room quieted. "Thank you for being here," she began, her voice steady, natural. "Most of you know who I am by now. But I want to be very clear. This isn't about me. Not anymore." A few cameras flashed. She didn't flinch. A few days ago, I boarded Flight 347 as a paying customer. I sat in seat 1A, a seat that came with years of sacrifice, of fighting for a place in rooms where I wasn't invited but made myself undeniable, and despite all of that I was still treated like an afterthought. Her gaze swept the crowd. I wasn't denied a meal, I was denied respect, and that's something too many people are familiar with. In boardrooms, in schools, in first-class cabins. The idea that some of us have to prove we belong in spaces others are simply assumed to own. A long pause, then she continued. When that happened, I didn't yell. I didn't tweet, I didn't demand, I acted. Quietly, precisely, and it forced a system to respond. Not because I am powerful, but because I was right. Whispers rippled through the room. But let's be honest, most people don't get that chance. Most people who face discrimination don't have data teams, security platforms, or direct access to airline CEOs. That's the real issue. That's why I'm standing here. Vanessa reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a single sheet of paper. This, she said, is the signed agreement between the Rhodes Initiative and Stratus Air. It makes our new training and oversight program part of their official operations globally, and it begins with the acknowledgement that discrimination doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers, shrugs, avoids eye contact, and that too has consequences now. The CEO of Stratus Air, Charles Hanley, rose silently from his seat at the side of the room and joined her on stage. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He simply stood beside her, nodded, and placed his signature on the digital screen being projected behind them. Vanessa turned back to the crowd. I didn't want an apology. I wanted change. And this is only the beginning. Applause erupted. Not loud, not explosive, but genuine, respectful. After the press conference, as the room cleared, Vanessa remained behind with her small team. Asha approached with her tablet. You've got hundreds of messages already. Social media's exploding. Hashtag Seat 1A is trending again, and there's a note from the White House. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. What kind of note? An invitation, Asha said, grinning. They want you to advise the new Equity in Transportation Initiative. Vanessa didn't smile. Not yet. Instead, she glanced down at the empty seat in the front row. The same place where Claire Whitmore had once stood, all smugness and entitlement, now replaced by something else entirely. Silence. Let's take our time with that, she said. Real change doesn't happen overnight. Later that evening, Vanessa walked alone through JFK's Terminal 4. She passed rows of travelers, some laughing, some arguing over boarding passes, others hunched over phones or tugging at restless children. None of them recognized her, and she preferred it that way. As she moved toward Gate B-19 for her next flight, this time to Los Angeles, she noticed something subtle, a new plaque near the first-class check-in. It read, Respect is not a class, it is a standard. Below the line was a QR code linked to the new Rhodes program for service equity. Vanessa paused for a moment, touched the plaque gently, and then proceeded toward security. She didn't need anyone to announce her. She didn't need another podium or another spotlight. Her work would travel with her, not because of her name, but because of the movement she had sparked. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was still fighting for a seat. She felt like she had opened the door. As the wheels of the plane lifted off the runway, the sun dipped below the New York skyline. Vanessa reclined slightly, eyes closed, a quiet peace settling into her. The fight wasn't over, but it was no longer silent. Her story, quiet, fierce, and unstoppable, had already taken flight. What about you? Have you ever been dismissed or overlooked in a space where you knew you deserved respect? share your story in the comments. And if Vanessa's journey moved you, like, share, and subscribe for more stories that remind us what real power looks like. Because sometimes all it takes to change everything is someone who refuses to stay quiet.